Get everybody in. We're going to see if we can get some folks in, and I'm going to go through a few things tonight on the whiteboard, and then we may get into a PC stuff, but right now we're building a couple things, and I'm going to get you guys to give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Make sure we move the camera setup for a little, I'd call this a classroom session tonight. A lot of people have been asking me a lot of questions to do something like this, to kind of go through not just mining, but through kind of blockchain technology, and just kind of what's the future. And this is, you know, why you guys shouldn't always have to freak out about price and stuff. Understand what's coming down the line and why this stuff becomes valuable. Let's see if we can get some stuff online. And it looks like we're good right now. Can you guys hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Perfect. All right, so we'll let a few more people get in, and then I'll go ahead and get started, and I'll kind of go through an agenda of what we're looking at tonight, and then I'll kind of pan over and show kind of what we're working through. Todd's over there working out. You can give everybody kind of a thumbs up. We got a couple rigs that we're working on right now. I was going to show you guys one of the configurations with the new 1060, but we're working through that right now. We're trying to optimize a few things with it. That'll be for maybe tomorrow's video. Usually we get the whole crew over on Wednesdays, and we just discuss things with VBT, try to get the website, try to dial in. I was wanting to get the beta version of that out as quick as possible, so we might just dive into that tomorrow. But at least Thursday's video will bring us that 1060 review of the new mining software that enhances it by about 20%. From the early testing, we're not seeing that with like the 1080s or the 1070s. There's incremental increases on those. So we'll take that for that episode. So it'll probably be Thursday with more of a deeper dive on that, because I want to not just, bottom line, we had to build Ubuntu from scratch. We deployed SG Miner, and the forked version with the new Nvidia stuff. It was kind of a pain in the butt to set up. So I want to make sure that we can get through it, get it tested, and then bring it to you guys probably more in a condensed form. That way it's not really confusing on how to put that together, because there's a Windows distro of it, but we were trying a lot with the Linux stuff too. So look for that around Thursday. So tonight, I think we got enough people in here to kind of start. I'm going to go through a couple things, and I'm going to draw it onto the board, and I'm going to zoom in and get it more depicted. But we're going to go through a lot of the questions that we get in there is about PSUs, so power supplies, and I'm going to kind of draw this out of what to expect from each of the power supplies. Like when we get, and what I mean by that is, you know, a lot of people asking, you know, if I have a 900 watt power requirement, do I have enough? And I have 7 cards. Do I have enough of the 6 and 8 pin connectors for those 7 cards with a 900 watt power supply? So what I'm going to do is give you kind of the key to how power supplies work with regards to the power, and then what to expect out of each of the connectors. That way you can plan appropriately your power supply needs when you're building your rigs. So we'll go through that. Then we'll go through kind of the bandwidth. I have a bandwidth monitor that monitors all of our traffic on the network. So each computer, at least in this place, all the packets are being recorded. So I know what comes in, what comes out, and I know how much it is. So we can kind of take a typical miner and how big that is, how much bandwidth. I mean, a lot of people ask us, you know, I don't have a lot of bandwidth, or, you know, my internet connection is not very good, you know, how much does it actually use? So we can show you that kind of quantitative numbers on that. So that'd be kind of part 2 of this. So PSU this, and then we'll get into what I think is kind of the main thing that needs to be explained is the difference between, this is kind of going what I did last week, where I got kind of deep dive on what blockchain and tech and Ethereum and all that is. But really explaining to you guys in English, private chains, permissioned chains, and then public chains, the three kind of main chains when it comes to blockchain. And there is not a lot of this out there right now. A lot of this is up in the kind of corporate sphere of the way it works. And really this is not anything that you guys will do really anything with, just understanding more the underlying structure of how and what's being done in the background. You know, again, our channel is mainly around mining in this, but understanding this understands you the value add to the network and the system. So I'm going to take you guys through all three of those things and take a look on our stuff here on the chat. So, now, I'm not looking at any chat, and we don't have Miss BBT's not here tonight. She's doing, well, she's here. She's out, passed out. It's like a scout week for us for kids and stuff. So super busy on that front. So I'm going to be handling just tonight, working at the camera. So if you're asking me questions, if you've done super chats, any of that kind of stuff, I am going to get to it. But notice I'm not looking at a monitor or anything in front of me or anything like that. So you're not being ignored. If you guys can help me out, the folks that are in the channel that are going to be here for a little bit can let people know that I'm not looking at the chat, so I'm not ignoring them, but I will get to them. So let's go ahead and start real quick first with the PSU, and I kind of gave myself a little diagram here, and you guys probably can't see that even if you're zoomed in, of what that is, but essentially it's the main class of power supplies for the mining rigs of what's out there. And you're going to be working with 650, let me find a pin that's better than this one. And it's a little better, and a little brighter. Let's go black. That's a good one. Yeah, purple. Purple's good. So you have a 650. Oh, that's probably. Can you guys see that? Let me see. That does not look good. Let's do this one. Make sure it's nice and clean, and then we'll get on there. All right. So essentially, we have the 650s watt, the 750, the 850. The 1000, the 1200s, the 1300s, and the 1600s. Essentially, that's all the class of power supplies that you guys will use when you're mining. The main planning factor really comes down to, if we build the back of the power supply boxes, is PCIe, the actual adapters for the power supplies. So 650s always have essentially two connectors. Don't worry about all the 24 pin and the SATA connectors. The main thing's here, and those will strand out to a 6 and an 8 pin almost on every 650 that you buy. A 6 and an 8 pin. So you got two of them. So that allows you to essentially do two cards with a 2 and 8 pin requirement, or you can do 4 cards that have a 6 pin requirement. So as long as you're using something like the 460s, the RX 460s, the RX 560s that actually have the single 6 pin, you can get 4 of those easily on one 650 on a 650 watt power supply. Now I'm going to be using a lot of EVGA references here. The Supernova as a reference. So like the 650 P2 is a pretty cheap power supply. It's right about $100. That's a great 4-card power supply because you're going to have the pinouts that you need for that. Let's see. Can you guys see this all right? Let me know. Let me know in the chat if you guys can see this. Hopefully you guys can see this pretty clear. I'm watching the chat right now. Just let me know. I'll come back to it. Your 750 is essentially the same thing. On some power supplies, some have 3. You got to look at the back of the power supply, but most of the time, the 750 will have 3, and they'll either come in 2 configs. One is an 8-pin, a single 8-pin, and then a 6 and an 8-pin. That's a lot of 750s are like that. Some will have 2 of the 6 and 8 pins and a single. And usually that single, you're like, well, why would it only just give you 1 single? That's because this one would be a high amp rail, where it'll have like 25 plus amp on that one rail for like if you have like a single, high-end single 8-pin graphics card, you'd have it on that. This one again is kind of the same setup here, but the 750s you could technically branch out into like a 5-card rig. If you had like a very low power supply requirement, like a lot of the newer cards you could do this. You could get into just the 5 cards with the 750 and be just under. 850 is essentially 3 with a 6 and an 8, a 6 and an 8. 8, 6, 8, 6, 8. 3 full cards, full size, like 6 and an 8 pin with a power supply like this. So the 850, you'll have usually all your 850s will come with the double connector, the double connector for the power. So you could get 6 cards if you were using 6 pins. You could use adapters to go 6 to 8 here. You just got to watch your power, because if that's the case and you have 6 8-pin cards, you're probably going to outpull what that 850 is doing. Maybe if you mod the BIOS or mod the power down, like if it's an Nvidia setup, you can get them down to like 770 watts, but you're going to be really pulling on that. Like if you're like, let's say you use 6 1070s and running at 60% power, you can get that down to about 770 watts. So if you find the 750s with a single 8-pin, you could technically do that with a setup like that. 1000 watts usually have 4 with a double, 2 doubles, and 2 singles. Usually that's the power configuration on the 1000 watts. When you have a lot of power supplies, depending on what you've kind of done here, like on the 750 or let's say the 850, the 850, you may buy an extra 850 and just use 2 of those. You'll have an extra double here. Well, technically you could use the extra double here. You're just going to have to watch the amps on that. If you go to 4 doubles there, you may start over pulling what that power supply does. So I've seen some people that are like, well, I have bought so many power supplies, I can just do all 4 of those with the double chains. And what ends up happening is you end up having some weird graphics issues, or you have a miner that's not super stable. And you're like, well, I'm under my power requirement, right? I've seen a lot of people giving me messages, and we have 300 plus emails that are even unread right now. And so if I haven't got to your messages, it's part of what it is. But the common theme on a lot of this stuff is like, I'm at 700 watts from the wall. Here I have a 7-card setup and I'm on 1000 watts. It should work. And what I'm telling people here is the rel requirement here, even though you actually have enough connectors to plug it in, you're probably exceeding the rel requirement, and you don't even know that it's dropping the GPU. When a heavy load's on it, it's just killing that line can't keep up. And it's not reset. Most power supplies, if you exceed them too much, they'll just bounce the rig. They'll shut down, it'll kill, it'll go into a switch mode. But sometimes these things drop enough amps to where the card just stalls, and the card like it'll be mining for an hour and then it'll just stop. So you really got to watch this. The way to check that is you can look at when you're buying your power supply, look at the amps required. So if this is a 12 amp rail, and then these ones are 25, so if you have 4 rails here, you're probably going to have a couple 25 or 40s, and then you may have a couple that are under 20 amp, depending if you're buying like a cheaper power supply. And that right there will drop your amp load on those pieces and affect it. So sometimes it's not about just having the power. It's about also making sure your amp requirements. So when you're looking at that, you'll look up the amps on here, and then your card, whatever card you're using, will give you a required amp load on the rails. And when I say the rails, it's the stuff that's plugging on the top of the graphics card. So just make sure those things are pretty close to each other. If they're way off, like if the card says recommended like a 25 amp rail and you're putting it on a 15 amp rail, you're probably going to run into an issue, and it's probably not going to be just not working, or the machine, it's going to run for a little bit, and then it's just going to hit a point to where the fan spins up, a few things happen, and then it just shuts off on you. So back to this here, and then some of these 1000s also will go to 6. I should say that, like the 1000 watt P2 from EVGA has 4 single connectors and then 2 double connectors. So you'll have 4 of the 8 pins, and then you'll have 2 more 8 pins here, and then a 6 pins. The 1200 is going to have the same configuration. Besides, 4 of these are going to be doubles versus having the 4 singles, if that makes sense. So 4, this is actually 4 of the 6 and 8 pin, and then 2 of the single 8 pins for this, for the 1200s. Where this one's kind of the opposite. It's 4 of the 8 pins and 2 of the 6 and 8 pins. They just kind of flip it on between the 1000 and the 1200. So again, you'll have that many connections. The 1300 G2, and I'll have to look at this one again, but I believe it's this. Should have 8 in total. And this is 4 singles, single 8 pins, and 4 duals, 6, 8 pin. So 8 in total. The 1600s have rows of 3 of them, so it's 9. And these ones will have 4 singles, and what was that? 2, 3, 4, 5 doubles of the 6 and 8. And that's like the 1600 G2, the P2 for like EVGA, and the T2 has this to where it only has a couple singles, and then like 6, or it's 3 single amp rails, and then 6 of the 6 8 pins. And they just flip it and give you a little more load because it's a titanium. So you can get like a 10 card rig on this. You know, if they're like singles, you could get that to where you're going to run out of your other SATA, your 6 pins and your 4 pin connectors, to where you're only going to get essentially, like I had that whole 9 card rig a few videos back on this, and I still had room to put more. So I could get 10 on it pretty comfortably. Technically, with some extenders on the 6 pins, I could get technically almost 12 on that one power supply. I'm probably going to cap out though on the amps on that many graphics cards, depending what the graphics card is. Like 1060s, I could probably do it. 1070s, 1080s on the Nvidias and or the RX 580s, not so much. So that's essentially what you're looking at. I don't know. Hopefully this was helpful. This part of this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if this kind of thing is helpful for you guys. You guys can go back when you're planning out the cards and rigs. I'm looking at chat to make sure if it's good or not. So let me make sure I'm all the way down. Okay, good. So you guys can come back to that. I'm gonna nuke this part here. There's a lot of comments about, and I mean there's a lot more, guys. I just scratched the surface on this. The 6 and the 8 pin, you know, it all comes down to just making sure you kind of have, that's nasty. You kind of have the whole, oh man, I'm gonna have to get a different, that's one thing about black here. Get rid of that. You know, part of it's capacity planning on, like, if you make sure you have enough of the rails for the power supply. But the other part of some of the stuff that I'm seeing that you guys are having, some people can't get the 1200s or the 1000s right now in the area that they're in. So you're having to pair a couple 750s, or you have to pair some 650s. And they're running into some issues, and the problem is that some of those lower quality 650s and 750s don't have the amp requirement on some of those, like RX 580s and that kind of stuff that just are requiring almost 30 amp rails. You know, it's not as bad as it used to be. This used to be a lot worse when we were dealing with like 290Xs and that kind of stuff. I mean, they just had a lot higher requirements. 7970s, 7990s, those kind of graphics cards were just pulled so much juice that, you know, the 1600 watt barely did a single 6-card rig. So we're dealing with a lot better solutions here now. You know, so it's just making sure you have enough. So the next thing, you know, I'll come back to the bandwidth testing thing because I actually got to get the screen up. We'll come back to the bandwidth thing because I gotta prep that screen to get into it, because I have to get into my router and then through a thing, and I want to make sure that I'm just showing you the one piece there. I don't want any unwelcome guests slipping into the router network. So we'll come back to the bandwidth thing. I think that's important. People want to see kind of what is a typical rig pool, and I have like it all charted out. So we'll come back to that. So we're going to come into explaining the concept of blockchains in general when it comes to what private, permissioned, and public chains are. So what we are mining right now, you can think of as the internet, public chain. That's what's worth the money. Our services that we have as miners contribute to that hash power and validate the blocks as they get inserted into that public chain, as it starts to mold and create that immutable blockchain. That is continuing on as supplies of coins are going up. Supply. You know, and then you got a demand for people buying it right now, which is really driven based right now. The demand is essentially side is if people want to hold the token and exchange and buy the token from you guys and hold it. Pretty much almost all of the current blockchains out there, literally almost all of them, are doing this all based on a supply demand speculative kind of nature, with the intention that there's a lot going on in the background, and at some point things will be deployed to the public chain. So think of the public chain as internet. There's permission change, which I'll come back to. I'm going to skip over this, and then I'm going to come back to this because this is intriguing by itself. But you have private change, which is like Microsoft, Azure, Ethereum's consortium, which essentially allows pretty much anybody can go out and make a free account on Azure, and then you could spin up using the Microsoft ARM template. You can spin up your own little Ethereum network, which essentially looks like something like this, where you have the internet and it comes into the Azure cloud environment. and creates essentially a little miner network, transaction front page, and allows you to set up kind of wallets and kind of create the kind of ecosystem that we live into, with the intention of building smart contract apps. Somewhere where you can have Ethereum and source those apps that you're creating without having to buy current supply at whatever price to run the gas price, because Ethereum is essentially a consumable. It's a commodity. It will be used for the consumption of runtime for applications. So this kind of is the public or the private chain. Private. And there's a lot of different companies, consortiums, ICO groups, folks that are spinning up stuff, using these cloud resources to kind of mold and conform and try to figure out like literal big world supply chain, you name it, problems in that kind of world to make sure that it's working. But this private, think of it, if you work in a company or you're around a company, is like intranet. If you're at work and you have an intranet, or if you're like a laborer and you're working out in the field and you have to go in and do like your healthcare or something, you have to get into like an internal company website. That's an intranet. It's closed. It's only them. It's not out on the internet, right? So that's what that part is. The problem with that is that it's not really a problem, but if you want to interact with other people, it becomes becomes complicated. If you made some cool little app here and you want to send it to some other person that's over here, like, hey, I want to exchange data with you, but you're in a closed environment. That's kind of where this piece right here, permissioned chains, which is essentially a whole bunch of these enclosed little networks talking to each other, kind of bypassing the point of a public chain. Now, again, they're still point to point, right? If they can build them all day long, and they're creating their own little, they call these kind of syndicated networks. It's just like, think of it like you have syndicated TV, right? For your particular area, it's syndicated for your particular area. These are what they would call a syndicated network. So, and it's good in theory if they just need to move certain things, like your banks and a lot of that kind of stuff will use public internet through encryption, and then you have essentially what would be called like an off internet fiber, which is like a privatized network. There's those kind of things that are for business to business type of stuff. But when you're trying to interact with larger supply chains, third parties you don't have necessary agreements set up with, or agreements to set up their own little pieces here, there's a massive use case to ensure that you have most of your stuff running on the public internet for all kinds of reasons. This stuff costs money. These point-to-point here, you have to set up, in the Microsoft Azure world, they call that express routes. Which you're paying for all that. There's a cost to that. And this is kind of the the whole point of like the internet and all that. But sometimes you want that more secure, direct line, fast, speed, all that kind of stuff. You'll set up those syndicate networks. So this is happening with pretty much everything in business anyways, is this kind of direct link thing. It's just the blockchain style of that. But then you got the public chain, and this is the kind of holy grail of what anybody mining and anybody contributing to the network or anybody purchasing tokens or anything of that kind of nature. The stuff that matters is when things are going to run on this. Because we saw, if you want any kind of indicator, real no kidding indicator, you saw that there's two main kind of networks out there right now we're running on public. Bitcoin, through stuff like BitPay, and all the integration that's out there with Bitcoin, it's running on public. Is all of it was based on the internet. Not a lot of it was forked. Why some of it has been forked over to private chains. The main chain is one, and this is why people are like, oh, Bitcoin's dead, it's got all kinds of problems. No, Bitcoin is running things literally on the internet right now between all kinds of different lanes of commerce, on people using transacting stuff between point to point. It's integrated, it's out there, it's being used in a public capacity. So Bitcoin, that's why right now Bitcoin continues and remains the top proverbial dog on those things. And it's not just a matter of money transfer, there's all kinds of stuff with Bitcoin is facilitating with that. It's with B2B commerce, there's a lot of things that Bitcoin's in there. The other one, which I don't want to call it, I mean, it's not really a traditional blockchain, but essentially it's like digital bank money. But Ripple is the other one. And that's why in January, when it was worth like 0.2 of a penny, it flew to almost 39 cents when they announced that they had 8 to 10 banks worldwide using their network in a production environment. That's the key. It's on the internet and it's being used in a capacity that requires people to exchange genuine, real medium of income for a service. The second that starts to really genuinely interact, then the folks holding the currencies and speculating against the currencies and all that kind of stuff kind of fall back into more of an investor kind of role, running price up and giving development teams maybe more capital to work on. But it's being used. It's legitimized. It's out there. It's being used by companies. That's why both Bitcoin and Ripple have the effects that they have right now. Ethereum, purely based off a lot of speculation, but people understanding what the underlying structures are being in play right now, is driven that price up for Ethereum into levels that would be probably attained if it was actually running, you had actual apps running on that network. So it really kind of comes to a precedence of where does it go from there, because it's going to have a couple, I don't want to say problems, but at some point the gas price is going to be too expensive to run on the network if it ran up too high, like 10,000, 20,000 Ethereum price, but there is an equilibrium, and there's probably a lot more runway with it right now as it is, with regards to price and amount of volume that the system could handle. All that right now, when you start looking at some of the things that Ethereum could start to solve from a supply chain standpoint, and some of the other benefits in all sectors. I'm just going to leave it as all sectors. I mean, it could be really anything. So you can see the second that Ethereum, or even some of its secondary, Storage J, and let's say Golem, if you just take these three things, they look a lot like somebody like with my normal background that has nothing to do with Bitcoin, being in like a solutions consultant level. This looks a lot like something that I'm familiar with. If you look at a cloud setup where you have logic and compute, or this is really logic and database, storage, and compute. If Golem fits the use case of a world global supercomputer based in Ethereum, to where they offset the jobs to the mining community to process with all the CUDA cores and everything that's out there, the proof of work side of algorithm starts to kind of go away, and that's okay going from to a proof of stake in that world, because you're going to be doing that kind of that proof of effort, to where you're getting into where you're doing computational stuff for the network as a supercomputer with your mining equipment. That's the compute side of it. Storage J, offering storage on a cloud, like the cloud stuff. If you bound all these together, you're essentially replacing, not really replacing, but you're augmenting current cloud offerings. The compute, the storage, the logic server, and the database are some of the key fundamental things that make up how everything works. If you look back 10 years, 20 years ago, that was just big server rooms with lots of stacks of computers that weren't virtualized. They were actually physical, one for one. You put so much on one server, have to go buy another server. So that whole thing is kind of, once these things kind of go prime time and go to the public chain, you're going to have that first kind of big thing saying, hey, we're running, and if they're running, they're having to pick up public Ethereum to run at runtime. That logic and that smart contract and all that stuff's going to spend Ethereum. So that's the whole thing. So when people start telling you, oh, it's, you know, it's all fake, it's all whatever, absolutely not. It's fundamentally going to change things. It is changing things, and that it's in this world right now. So it's in a world of dev, integration, pre-production, and production. You have a lot of stuff in dev. You have some stuff in integration. And we'll start to hear about stuff when it hits pre-production. Stuff that's almost ready for prime time. And then they'll start strategizing of how they're going to implement on the network. How's it going to impact it? Is it going to impact speed? Does it have everything that's needed? We can tell right now from just the activity that's happened in the last few weeks with the network slowing down because of ICOs and stuff, that some of that stability stuff needs to get fixed and figured out before the companies will start to move to that pre and prod out here. I have absolute faith that they'll figure that part out. It's in everybody's best interest to figure that out, to make sure that it's a stable environment and a production level. Because this is the ultimate end game. It has to be on that big, huge public, because you're going to want customers that don't have huge back-end systems to be able to interact with you, especially on a supply chain level. So I'll digress from that. You guys asked for this kind of thing. I've had several people ask to kind of dive back into my more core. I mean, we do a lot of mining and stuff, but this right here is really my kind of world outside of the mining world. So does this help? I mean, I'm trying to give you guys a basic understanding of how this works. I'm gonna grab a drink while you guys are processing that. I know that was a lot of information. I just want to, there's a lot of people that try to articulate it and try to explain it, and they may work in one capacity of this and are real super smart subject matter experts in it. And I'm not really necessarily a subject matter expert in any one single component here, but I'm around all of this in general, and I try to, I mean, I got into this kind of stuff in early 2012, so I try to learn it and uphold the network, get people educated on how to mine, how to get part of it, that big ecosystem type of thing. But as I see more and more people not understanding, you know, the difference between public, you know, the private, the permissioned, and the public chains, if you understand these big components, you can believe in what's going on with it and help contribute and understand when you're reading about what an ICO is trying to do. You know, like Golem, like what are they trying to do? What is their feature that they're bringing to the table? Is it done? Is it ready? Is it done and ready from at least a standpoint that they could stand it up and you could test something on it? You know, or is it just theory? You know, theory is okay. Sometimes you need that incubation period, but you know, the successful ICOs that I see coming out there is going to be people that have some kind of great idea that is actually working in some kind of dev basic feature model. And those ones that really kind of move the needle on, you know, taking old world stuff and kind of slamming it into new world tech. Those are the ones that, you know, look super interesting. And all it is all the ICOs and stuff, all they're doing is they're issuing a token for an exchange to grab, you know, some capital to be able to do their stuff. But, you know, it needs to be, you know, responsible. And most development teams, guys, and it's not to really take any hit on any of the ICOs. Everybody got this? They got this on the internet. We can not, you know, normally in a whiteboard you're like, does anybody take a picture? I think we're good since this is like live. I'll explain the kind of one more part in this, and then I'll take some questions. I think this one will probably get rewatched a few times as people start to kind of put it together. But I'll talk a little bit about ICOs and the kind of what the impact on the network is. Kind of from a financial standpoint, and then kind of what the whole purpose of what they are and what they're doing. You know, that stuff is actually really good, but it smears like you would believe. So the actual, you know, I think what somebody can look up real quick and say in the chat, I don't know how many ICOs that just came out from Ethereum in the last few days. I would say, I think it's 3. It's Status, Bancor. What else? You guys type in there. I think it was 3 of them. Maybe IOTA or Ant shares. I know it was Status is the one that jacked everything up, and then Bancor, and I think there was one more. EOS? I don't think EOS was doing their stuff yet. So, basic, and I am not 100% expert on this, but I think I understand the basics of the initial coin offers. So, as they start to buy ETH, or folks buy ETH to buy into an ICO, raises capital for them to do things, to finish their development on whatever they've built and laid out a pretty cool plan. They will raise capital to finish that, kind of like initial seed funding. They should take a portion of that funding. So like if Bancor or something grabbed 153 mil, I don't know how big their team is, but if you had a development team of 10 to 20 people, we'll just use basic numbers here, and you paid everybody 50, right? You're talking maybe 100, or let's say $1 million, 1 mil to 1.5 mil for a year. Maybe 2 mil after you get everything else, right? So that's like a development team for like a year that's making pretty moderate, kind of low income. It's a startup. You know, you're not gonna. You should have your salary plus some kind of ownership, and that's you know, if you're making nothing, you know, 80K in an expensive city, and you have a 20% stake on X amount of shares of the token. If the token goes up, you're doing okay. And then if the application works, you're probably doing a lot better too, right? So you look at that of running like a pretty decent. I mean, if I had $2 million to go and sit there and stand up a development team, I'm going to bring you something to market probably in 18 months that's going to, whatever segment we go and choose, is probably going to knock your socks off, right? That kind of stuff, depending on what it is, if it's a game, if it's an application or something, 18 months is really an agile life cycle in almost about any app that you want to build, short of like completely replacing like some huge system, right? So 2 million gets you that, right? And an average market in this day and age, $2 million will get you some kind of cool product most of the time, if you have a pretty good design team. So this is part of the issue, is if a team runs up 183 or 153, and then they go and sell that for cap, and they sell all of it, or sell a good portion of it, where is all that money going? Because that's definitely not going to, they're going to need that for that size of a team, unless they're like in maybe San Francisco downtown and they just bought a high rise. So that's part of the issue. That's part of the regulation that's probably going to come in here, and they're probably going to start to cap these things. I mean, angel investments and initial Series A capital is like $1 million, 500,000, 200. You know, it's very small seed funds usually when they're trying to incubate. When Silicon Valley is trying to incubate, and I'm not saying Silicon Valley had it right, because we've seen more innovation now than ever, and a lot of it is because of some of that huge capital, right? Because Silicon Valley may start you at 500K seed, which gives you like 4 to 8 people for 6 months, and that's a stressful ass 6 months to try to get something out, because most teams need about 18 months to get it done. I mean, get applications cradle to grave, get people talking about it, getting UAT done, having a few agile cycles, and then getting an actual product out the door. You probably need up to 18 months to get it really prime time. By 12 months, you're demoing it, you're out there, you're getting excited about it, and then people are going to punch holes through it. So you need that extra 6 months. So that much runway, you're going to need more than 500K, usually in expensive cities. So, I mean, again, we're talking low amounts of dollars. What these ICOs are raising are like crazy land. And it's just because everybody's trying to get into it, right? And it's a different funding mechanism. Before, this was super controlled. And it was done because somebody up top thought they knew how to measure it. And that's what gives you, that's a formula that gives you an output, a good output, a decent output. And then they can hedge a risk, because they can do a whole bunch of these 500K funds and stretch their money out and get 4 big projects out of that. And if this one fails, this one fails, this one fails, and this one does pretty good and nets them 2.5, they just made all their money back in 500. That's the basic model. I'm really downplaying the back end, but that's essentially a risk basic model that they would use. So ICOs kind of says, done with that, we'll raise our own money, like through crowdfunding, and then we'll manage it. And that's part of the issue with some of these things. So not all the ICOs, and I haven't researched them enough to see if they have like cap control to where they get a portion of funding X times 5% if it equals this much. If they have the smart contract written, so I'd be interested to see the ICOs that actually have that integrated to say, we're going to sell this, but we're only going to do so much with it, and then maybe have a distribution based on, they could have the smart contracts out there to, if you were an early investor, you get that paid back through a smart contract, that kind of thing, kind of like dividends and stuff. There's opportunities for that kind of stuff for ICOs to do, where if they raise a lot, they could give back to the initial investors, because what address came in, confirm that address, reach out, bind in the sign up of the transaction, you're an email, something that binds you to it. That gets into kind of PII. So if you're wanting to do kind of a personal identified information, if you wanted to anonymously just get tokens and then try to do something with it, it's going to kind of break those folks from trying to invest in it. But having that will give you some kind of incentive that the ICO is just not going to take the money and run. And that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of regulatory stuff that's going to come down on this real soon. Just because this kind of action here, people buy Ethereum up. If they go to sell it, there's a sell-off of Ethereum, or there's a transfer of Ethereum, which I would call the delay effect, to Bitcoin, and then they'll sell the Ethereum here, which then has a delayed drop. So they're either knocking it down right away to cap, or they're doing the delay to Bitcoin, right? And then you'll have a drop of Ethereum there. Or they'll transfer it all into Bitcoin, and you'll see a Bitcoin drop too. And it kind of spreads it. Some of it's Ether. Bitcoin's also down, which we're seeing that right now. So they're hedging it across both. And if you see some of the other currencies, they're just people could exchange it for the other currencies, Litecoin, and then bring that down to kind of spread that burn across all the different cryptocurrencies. This is an incubation for that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of giving the keys away to the kingdom here on some of this stuff. So, but the more you guys understand this, there's not much you can do. There's not much any of us can do with it. It's just the way things are. What we can do is understand the behavior, that if we have ups and downs in crypto, some of that is that action. ICOs definitely have some kind of bearing weight of that, because the whole concept of what they are is to gain capital to go build their project. So if everybody accepted Ethereum and Bitcoin, it would just be changing hands then at that point. We wouldn't see it exchanged for another medium of, you know, cash. Because we don't see, you know, the cash USD value go up, right? I mean, it's just they're exchanging for USD. Ethereum's going down, more cash is getting purchased. So this is kind of down in the weeds. Hopefully this kind of explains some stuff. I'm kind of just dropping some knowledge here. I'm looking at your guys' feedback. I'll take some questions.
There's a super chat in there.
I have some super chats too.
Just one. Would the ETH chain grow and require a split?
Would ETH grow and require? Would the chain grow and require a split? No. The chain could grow for forever. Bitcoin's chain is going to grow forever. It's just going to get larger. The full nodes will get larger. As Ethereum, yeah, you guys will have to watch. My writing is horrible, but it's more of I kind of just blah the thoughts onto the page. It makes a lot more sense if you come back and watch this. If you come in late, and you know what? I think actually I got an eraser. I think it actually helps us. Nope, that's just as bad. So no, the chains will just grow, and the nodes that are supporting that will have to grow with it. It's just more of as the transactions, just like Bitcoin, as they get larger, as there's more transaction, each block that's minted gets larger. So you have to have the network that supports the larger block size, because there's just stuff that won't fit in the block. It's that simple. And then, you know, doing soft forks and all that kind of stuff helps enhance that. So I'm looking at your guys' chats here now. I'll answer some questions. I've been going for about 50 minutes. While I'm answering the questions, I'll get the other screen ready for the...
What language does ETH use?
What language does ETH use? It's Solidity. Or I think it's Solidity and Solidium? Yeah, it's Solidity. Let me, I'm going to get the other last part that I was going to talk about up. Let's see here. 92. And I'm looking at your guys' questions. All right, so soft forks and hard forks, couple questions on that. So the basic simple answer is, if you have a chain and it's going down this and new blocks are getting added of information, and this is just transaction history, and you get to a point and the consensus on this chain, I made the line too long yet. Let's go this way. The consensus, man, this thing is not. The consensus on the chain has a difference, and some people start mining this, and some people start mining this. That's a hard fork. In ETH's case, ETC, ETH. And based on the speed and transaction time, this one could get ahead of the other one. So like the Epoch 131 is what we're on now. Somebody could check what ETC is, if it's like 120 or something. And it doesn't have the volume that the other one does. And the block times, if this is 17 seconds and then this is still 10 seconds or something, I mean, you can have some changes there. That's kind of hard fork. If you have two groups on a proof of work system, providing work to both, you essentially split the chain. Soft fork is just essentially I can do this to a different color. Is that all the rules and everything that the code and the feature sets there, and then one day that kind of changes the content, but the chain is the same. In reality, it kind of goes, I should actually show it this way. If I go here, let me do it the way it really kind of looks here. So potentially it could have been doing this, but everybody's in consensus is doing the new chain, are the new features. It did not hard fork. Nobody else is mining this bottom one, and that's a soft fork. There's consensus, and it's still one unit. ETH stays the same. Everything's good. One of their mechanisms to get everybody over from proof of work to proof of stake is that when they go to introduce the new proof of stake contribution piece, the difficulty is going to be so high to mine that mining will cease on it, and they'll just go with this proof of stake, which means now you put in a stake of 1,000 Ether, and essentially your stake is giving you the weight to make that you agree with the rest of the network. The bottom line is that you're putting up a stake, and then you get a vote to say, I agree with that transaction. That's the longest chain. That makes sense. So the proof of work, where people think that they're processing transactions here, the proof of work, by and large, is just while there's this is the token generation. And then the actual blockchain stuff kind of hangs, if you're envisioning it, kind of hangs off the bottom, and it's just doing transactions. Like, we're just posting and agreeing, we're validating and verifying that all those transactions took place, and there was a debit and credit kind of accounts. That actual activity doesn't take thousands of GPUs and lots of people. That part's actually, you could get onto a Raspberry Pi and validate transactions. There's not a lot of computational stuff involved with that. The proof of work side that takes all the computation is a security mechanism and a payment mechanism for the network, for everybody to contribute a whole bunch of hashes to kind of like a lottery system to try to find the rights to write the next block, to say this is the new block. And then everybody goes out and validates that, and for their contribution, they get paid in a token. It's a mechanism for payment. It's a mechanism to secure the network. A lot of that mechanism is going to transfer to a proof of stake at some point once they get it all figured out. So for the distribution of mining hardware to not need to do that, there's other tokens that are still going to be doing proof of work, and I think ultimately, if you look at something like Golem, or coins that are going to be coming out like that, and that's not Golem, that's like bleh, something. That's that kind of proof of effort, or effort in general, that we're going to be doing when you're going to start to get into the compute side of blockchain tech. When you're going to want to send, if you're on a computer and you have a huge regression job And what I mean by a regression job is if you got like a weather model and you have tons and tons, like think of Excel with tons and tons of table data, that you have all these sensors out there grabbing all this data, and you're like, okay, I want to take all those inputs from all these 15, 20, 1,000 different sensors that are across the Pacific Ocean, and I have all this tabular data, and I'm taking that every 10 seconds, and I've gotten a week worth of data, and I want to run a model based on temperature, humidity, all this kind of stuff, right? Right now, that kind of data has to go over to like SAS servers or big Oracle database stuff, big, huge, expensive supercomputer, IBM Blue, that kind of stuff, to where you could have a proof of compute algorithm, something like the world's supercomputer that Golem was trying to look at, to where our GPUs and our mining equipment now isn't just chasing the proof of work. It's getting a job handed to it, and it's saying, here's a ticket, compute this, parallel task it, all the GPUs combined together, for a particular job, and get a portion of a token payment, which that's that kind of hybrid system that I was talking about before, to where you got your proof of stake people to mint the block, but you got your effort side that's getting this compute job. So your miners will start to have another task. So it's not that we're chasing the token, we're getting compensated in the token for the service. We become a managed service model then. That's when it changes from a securing and auditability of the network to going to more of being a contributor to the network, not just upholding it, but being a contributor as a service, a managed service for that network. That's the kind of stuff of using all that computational power. I mean, we're already all on the Stratum network. We're all submitting shares. It's just some code modified to then handle that kind of computational stuff. Give it a job, let it process on the miner, and let its post-processed results go back. It's kind of like the same thing if anybody ever did SETI at home, folding at home, that kind of stuff where they give you a packaged job, you chew on it, and then you push the results back. There's a real no kidding need out there for that kind of stuff, and you could really leverage a distributed computing model like that. So that kind of stuff is where I think in the long term, if I was a betting person, kind of where that kind of leveraging of as proof of work stuff kind of goes away. These mining computers that we have, that's a lot of power out there. There's a lot of you guys that have hundreds of rigs, whatever. That's a lot of computational power that can be leveraged and then compensated for. And then it all comes down to what's that price model going to be, and what makes sense, and it's got to be competitive with the other big offerings here. Because what's going to happen, guys, is everybody's like, oh, this is super disruptive, we're sticking it to the man. No, what the reality is, and I'm just being straight up with you, is the companies like SAS and Oracle and all these big companies, they have something called an attrition model, to where at some point 5 years from now they got to go buy new equipment. What if they start to move their model to where they're not buying big hardware, and they start modeling software that leverages our hardware, and you start flipping it around to where now you have a distributed contribution-based effort system. It's not going to take these companies out of business. It's advantageous for them to find avenues to adapt, right? And this thing is like an 800-pound gorilla. And no, I'm not talking about myself. This is an 800-pound gorilla that is coming down the pipe, that real money's being thrown at it, real money's being generated from all of us as contributors on the mining side, and as the folks that are investing in it. That some people are looking at it purely on the money standpoint and trying to make a buck and all that, but there's genuine investors that believe and understood and have had kind of meetings and went to consensus and all that kind of stuff and picked this kind of stuff up. And I haven't been to consensus or any of this stuff. I work kind of outside of all that, but understand fundamentally in how business works and what makes the models work for them. So this is diving way off of our channel normally. Again, I mean, if you guys can tell me like, whoa dude, go back to mining, and we can stick back on that in the next few videos, but I just felt it was time to kind of start to explain some of this stuff. And I mean, I'm open to your guys' comments and stuff. I'll look at your comments again. I'm watching your guys' comments, so I'm just this weird pet peeve. Well, it seems to be some pretty good feedback from the video. I mean, it should be kind of enlightening. I don't think a lot of people talk about this for all kinds of reasons. Part of it's because some of it's still theory craft on at least what the compute power stuff that I'm talking about. I mean, it still has a lot of that stuff still has to be laid out groundwork wise, especially on the compute side. The fundamentals though are there. The models are there that have proven to work. Like that study at home stuff, there is jobs that have been submitted to computers, and people's computers contribute to succeeding on those problem and data sets. The only difference with that model was there was no token associated with it. So if you were downloading SETI at home, you were just being out of the kindness of your heart searching for aliens, right? So this is a little different because it's an incentivization model, which then makes you indirectly a managed service, which, you know, if you looked at any kind of managed service, you know, from a company standpoint, managed services is like if you've outsourced your help desk. Like, I don't need to know, I don't care, I just need the 800 number and I need them to follow this script. That's a managed service. You purchase managed services when you're buying your internet. There's not somebody out there, you know, rolling a phone thing to try to keep your internet on. You have a managed service. Your internet's connected. You have somebody to call if there's a problem. That's that kind of stuff. Managed services out there. The only difference is that if you tie it to a token model, that's an innate way to make for the network to uphold itself, for people to contribute. If you're getting paid for it, then your depreciation on your hardware, your power, all that stuff, you have a compensation model for it. And you're doing it through like a kind of a crowdfunding kind of methodology, which allows the distribution of the cost to separate across many people and many companies and many entities versus just one person trying to flip the bill. So that's why it's really kind of taken everything by storm right now. Because there's a distribution of the amount of income, the amount of wealth, the amount of stuff that's being transferred into it. It's massive because there's a lot of people doing it. It's worldwide. This isn't just the US, it's everybody. It's everybody across the entire world. So I heard your bottom lines. Guys, I mean, I look at it as short-term gain, long-term loss if you don't have a community, right? So like, if we don't talk and we don't educate people on this, then there's going to be a few that are going to make money, but at what expense in the long run of if the network could really grow and mature? Because if you can get a lot more people into it and a lot more people that contribute, and that was more of what I was talking about in my last video, where I was saying, if you're mining and you're watching this channel and you're learning how to mine and you've done stuff and you've looked at other people's mining channels and you go out and you procure things to start to do mining, you're going to have one-to-many connections to people that are going to ask questions, that are going to try to figure out why in the hell is this person spending $2,700 plus on a computer system to do something that they don't understand. You're going to have this intrinsic value that you don't even realize. It's kind of like the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off thing. You don't realize you're learning karate. You don't realize the effect you're happening in your general circle, you know, by just participating. And people get interest in it, and then they become more than likely a purchaser of the tokens while you're generating it. And they're like, I don't want to get into that. It's, you know, there might be more risk that I want to. It might be too high of an entry point for me to invest. I got 500 or whatever I can put into it. Well, now they're a contributor of the coin. They're holding it for value, right, to see if that grows. And then at some point, you're going to have these companies moving over, companies, governments, small companies, people starting to leverage those services that are being created out there by all these startup and companies and stuff. And then there'll be that consumption models built in. If you look at any genuine business expense model, you need a building, you need power, you need all these things that without a thought, if you buy a house, you have an apartment, without a thought, you pay your power bill, you pay these things. You have to contribute funds to upkeep things. These blockchains, when they start replacing the big company assets and the big company storage and all that stuff, they're going to have to buy the token to put in the wallet to then burn against. But that's no different than them paying for their power, paying for their server bill, paying for those other things. So it's a mindset change. And the only way you start to change mindset is get confidence that the system's going to be up. It's not going to go down like Ethereum did this last week. You got to get that confidence in the system and the maturity in the system, and then people will start just not even thinking about it. It'll just start to happen. That, and you don't need necessarily the common person getting a Ledger Nano S and all this, or Trezor and all that kind of stuff, and getting into it and being hip and cool and having all the kind of Bitcoin. You can have all that and the underlying infrastructure, and it's all just upholding the network. And through normal attrition, the business model that they'll just, as servers get aged out, they'll start pushing more and more up to that distributed cloud setup. And as the size of the capacity starts to rise, we'll really start to see what's really needed. There may be a model out there when you start looking at systems of scale that a mining equipment in general may become a lot more viable, because now you really need the extra compute. A Raspberry Pi is not going to cut it. The blockchain's too big. It's you start having cross-chain connections to like something like StorageJ, where they're actually going to have cloud level type of storage that are connected. So as the Ethereum blockchain starts to get too big, or if they do a fork and have a soft fork and have to add a lot more contract logic in there, and it becomes now not just your database, it also becomes really your logic flow engine, and you need to have that tied to another chain. There's a whole litany of future tech here, and all of it's resting on a lot of these huge breakthroughs in the blockchain stuff. So kind of a confidence boost for people to give them an understanding of what's going on, how that kind of stuff works. I obviously always tell everybody to go out there, research it, understand more. Do fact checks on what I'm telling you guys. I'm trying to just give it to you just as how it operation and works in general, and the cost comparisons there. But go out there, research it, and get confidence in what's out there. And if you get caught up in the current prices and up and downs and stuff, there's a lot of variables right now playing with that. It's unregulated. You're going to have a lot of people that have big money in there playing around with it. It's really irrelevant the second a big, entity or some new feature comes out there that somebody's using it, just like it happened with Ripple. Ripple's probably the best example, and kind of the worst example in a way, because it's not necessarily a direct blockchain, but shows what happens with that effect when you get acceptance on a production side. So, some people are hold, some people are, you're going to do the day trading and stuff, but I'll take some questions and we'll wrap it up right at 1 hour and 30 minutes. I think it's at 1:13. So I'm going to kind of come off camera right now, and I guess I can I don't know if I can show. Let's see here. I can answer some of the questions in my mess that I made over here. See if you guys can see. All right, all my trash here. So I'll take some questions, guys, for about 15 minutes. You guys have questions. We'll go back to a normal mining video on Thursday. And let me see, I'll get that way you guys aren't looking through me at like Inception. So the Hollow Fox says, thoughts on Metropolis. I think they go into testing. I think there's a dev meeting on Friday. I'm planning on it watching. trying to get me off.
Yep.
I think there'll be more information on that. Can you go over how the other mining other coins? Yeah, the cash money, we'll go through. I'm like, what are you doing? We'll go over that. Maybe that's a Thursday thing. We can talk Thursday on other coins. I do want to go through how to set up the other wallets, or not the other wallets, but yeah, I guess we really need a wallet episode. So if you're going to do like Siacoin or Library or any of that, we can kind of go through. Let's see what else we got here. How do we watch the dev meetings? So the dev meetings are on. You can join the Ethereum Foundation on YouTube, and then have the little alert to pop up whenever they go live. They do that just through a live stream, and it's just them talking. I think they just port their Google piece there. Oh, rip stream. It's back. We'll be more active on Discord in the future. Yes, guys, I will try to get onto Discord. I haven't been trying to ignore you guys on Discord. There's just we're moving a lot of stuff around here. I'm trying to get ready to possibly even move out of this place and then move on to another place right now. So there's a lot going on in the BBT world on that kind of stuff, and plus we're trying to get our own website out there that's pretty comprehensive. I've probably going way too deep than I need to on it, but I want to make sure it's comprehensive enough. So yeah, I'll try to get into Discord more and talk to you guys in there. What's the name of the miner that increased to 20% for 1060? I don't know, Blueberry, if you can link that miner distro for the 20% for the 1060. I don't know if you know that or not. We can get it for you guys if not. What's your take on Sunny Sharma is asking what's the take on past? I don't know much about it right now. I'll make a copy of that though and take a look. Copy notes. Here's my notes. Why don't I have enough task with my card? New mining cards. CryptoMine did a video. I did see CryptoMine did do a video. It's one of the lucky things about living, I think, where's he at? Like Hong Kong or something. He got access to it. I am trying right now to get from BioStar. I reached out to their marketing people, and I'm trying to purchase the 12 GPU motherboard. I'm actually talking to them tomorrow. If I can get it, I'm trying to get a DHL like 2-day overnight from Hong Kong, and see if we can actually get the 12 GPU board. So we'll have, I think it's the TB250 version 2. I also asked them, because they're a distribution center in Hong Kong, I asked them if I could actually purchase any of the mining cards. I don't know if we'll be able to get them, because evidently it has to go through some like US Customs stuff with the FCC on like new hardware, new components and parts. So we'll see if we can get that. I think the TB250 is going to be okay though, the version 2. What else do we got here? We're trying the new miner with the Nvidia change. We'll have that on Thursday, so I'll talk to you guys through that. I have not tried burst mining. We have some storage, but I use a lot of the storage for storing this 4K video. Jonathan, you having an issue with the M2 port? Well, I'm going to be messing with that on next. probably tomorrow, if not Thursday, we'll be messing with some new M2 port drives that we're going to be looking at. So maybe we can see if we can fix that issue if you're able to join that stream on Thursday. Is it worth buying mining rig cards? I mean, guys, if you're looking for quick money on mining, I mean, it's not there right now with the pricing the way it is. And Ethereum really was driving a lot of the value, and with the difficulty almost triple where it was at like 3 weeks ago because of the difficult ice age under effect. It's really, you're looking at a longer play now. You're looking at least 6 to 8 months on a rig at moderate cost, not 3 months anymore. So it's one of those things, you guys. I mean, this was the same story with Ethereum through March of 16 through like December of 16. In November, it looked horrible. You weren't making your power at all, and right now you're still making your power even on Ethereum. You're making well more than what your power costs to be right now. But not getting close to your RI after like 6 or 8 months. But I mean, it's, there was points in time in November and December last year that people weren't even making their power bill on it, right? But it was still running their mining rig, and then the price went up. We know what the price went to. So if Ethereum right now is at 250, a big app or something gets talked about and it gets speculated up to Bitcoin parity price, then you only getting 4 Ethereum a month just became like, wow, I should have been mining for a month and getting 4 Ethereum. So it's one of those things, or it could not do anything. I mean, it's just one of those, it's just history has shown that, people that consistently stick to mining, if the coin takes a huge lift in price, then, the 3 or the 4 coins that you made in that 1 month now more than makes up for your mining rate. How much time do we have left before ETH goes to POS? So POS's schedule right now, based on their last dev meeting, was they were going to start testing at the beginning to the mid of July on testnet. They were looking for a lot of testers. I haven't followed the Ethereum thread right now to see if they found through all their testers and that they started their testing, but that testing will go through August. And then if they were going to deploy anything with Metropolis, it would be in mid to late September. So if the difficult bomb or the Ice Age keeps up at the current rate, right now you're looking at another 6 weeks. It's going to more than triple the current difficulty. And so if you're making 6 right now, you're going to be making 2 Ether a month in another month and a half. So, and that's at the current rate of growth. So, now you're down to, if your Ethereum's 250, you're at 500 a month on one rig, right? So, if they cannot get Metropolis, then they're going to have to address the difficult bomb. So they're going to have to either soft fork it out and rebase Ethereum's network difficulty against current hash power, but they're going to have to do something because the block time is just going to exceed to the point that the public chain just starts to come to a halt. So we should see what's going on. Other cash money, I did see that PayPal donation, buddy. Thank you. We're buying some more equipment with all that stuff, guys. We take everything that you guys donate and we just ramp up I got in the secondary capture card coming in before we can start capturing the screens, and we can stop using the camera for that. We're investing right back into the show. So I do value your guys' super chats and your PayPal and your donations and stuff. We make sure that's our version of an ICO. Let's just call it that. We take that money and we invest it back into the show right now. So, versus trying to give you guys a token, you got your guys' token that you get from us is the content and the free content and the updates and the answering the questions and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of like this weird reverse ICO, and you guys can contribute through super chats and stuff. So. Is it worth mining a 1,000 FTC just in case it goes back up to $1 again? I loved Feathercoin. Feathercoin was I was a big fan of Feathercoin back in the day. I like the community. Feathercoin, I think, is only traded on Bittrex. We used to mine Feathercoin all the time. I really believed in Feathercoin. I liked the concept of it. It was like Litecoin. Let's just say that there was no other real contribution to the new feature set that Feathercoin really provided, more than a medium of exchange. But yeah. Since I made the Super Chat grayed out for some reason. Yeah, I don't know why Super Chat would be grayed out for you, brother, but yeah, no problem. J-Tal. Yeah, we've looked at Shopify, Merchant Shop. I mean, right now we've just been focused on trying to get you guys good content and get the website out before we try to like monetize the site or anything like that. The sort of monetization that we've had is just the Amazon links that you guys click when I add it to the video. That gives us a little bit. Amazon kind of changed the way their revenue model works with affiliates, so it's not as much for most people. But at the end of the day, if you guys are buying hardware, you're buying stuff on Amazon, you know, even if you're not clicking on our links, when I buy anything on Amazon, I find somebody else's channel, I click on it, I click their Amazon affiliate link. That gives everybody kind of this passive extra little amount that is just, if you're going to shop at Amazon, you might as well be hitting somebody's affiliate. I mean, that's just hooking somebody else up. So we try to do it for the other YouTubers, and we appreciate when you guys do it for us. If you're doing just random shopping, I mean, my wife goes out and shops, friends who go out and shop and stuff, and just hit people's affiliate links and stuff. That's just kind of a nice thing to do. No problem, Robert. Thank you. Thanks $2, buddy. We're gonna wrap this up in 3 minutes. Brett Riker, 20 seconds. It'll be the best hour and a half you've watched in a long time. I recommend once the video is posted, you go back and watch the hour and a half, and you'll consider yourself informed on what blockchain is. Yes, you cannot mine Ripple. I can tell you about NiceHash. NM 5.0, the 2850s, you can use look at a couple of videos ago. We have a add to PS2. You'll see a link for that. And 2 live streams ago, that device allows you to work that through there. Seth, thanks, man. Thanks for the 10, buddy. We'll use that for the next studio as we start to try to clean up the studio here. I mean, I haven't even painted my whiteboard yet. The whiteboard worked out tonight. What about ETH immutability? That's really the question, though. What about any coin's immutability? If they can, so nobody's going. The immutability is there. That you'd have to have absolute consensus going back to rewrite something. So it's real strong and good. I wouldn't worry about that. Do you like the idea of Lisk? I need to research Lisk more. I don't have a ton of information on Lisk. I'll add that to our list. All right, guys, one more minute, we'll wrap it up, and I'm glad that you guys like this content. You guys can go back, and if you guys have, I encourage to share this. If you guys have people in your community, if you guys have people that have questions, this is the kind of stream that really you can kind of share to them, and you know, maybe watch it with them and explain things if you understand and comprehend it. Getting people educated on this new world stuff is big, so I'll try to include some of these type. If you guys if the response is really good on this, I also take the critical criticism. If there's something in there that I misrepresented in some way, I mean, I think this stuff I felt pretty comfortable with understanding. I kind of live part of what we're talking about in this in general and my day-to-day stuff. But you know, if there's something of like, I value all feedback, guys. I mean, I'm not going to take any of it personally. GPU memory is a deal, hardware inconsistent, should I hash the hash rate stable? Yeah, so if you guys are getting memory errors, as long as you're not getting negative shares or something, and look at your share and your hash history on your pool output, if it looks pretty consistent and you're still having lots of memory errors, I say just push it. I have a couple machines that give me memory errors at 29 mega hash, and we let them go because I get accepted shares, I see the hash posted. It's pretty consistent. It's not affecting the actual operations that are going on. It wouldn't be something that you'd want to game with, but it's still able to get through most of its stuff. All right, guys, we're at 1:30. We're going to wrap it up. I thank you guys for joining in. Again, like, share, get this out there, and hopefully this is one of many videos like this that we can go through and explain as newer stuff comes out. I'll try to expand it more than just Ethereum and a few of the ones that we talked about. Maybe I can get into a more detailed on each of the coins to kind of show some of their feature sets or something like that. So you guys comment on this one, tell me some coins that you like and some more deep dive. Maybe we can get that kind of incorporated in another episode like that, and I can break it down in that way.